Again, I think that, of course, lesson study is one of them, and I was talking about tokatsu previously because those are practices in Japan, or a set of practices with ideologies in Japan, which have been there for a very long time, and Japan is experienced about, but which the dominant, I think, the models in the international world today, which are largely, I think, Western, may not have focused on as much, because of differences in cultural traditions and things like that. So if lesson study is the collaborative learning of teachers, I think tokatsu is much more, collaborative learning of children in the non-cognitive areas. And in that sense, I think, not just Japan, but it's, because I believe very much in the diversification of international models. See, because we are in an era of global borrowing of models, and the more there are from different cultural traditions, then the alternatives are greater, I think, for countries when they try to embark on educational reform. And right now, the major models tend to be Western models, and with the exception of some, like Singaporean math, and lesson study, and I think a much more diversification of those models that originate from different cultural experiences would make the international educational model field much richer. See, because then you would have more choices of adopting models which are closer to the needs of your society, instead of trying to adopt a model where which may not fit the needs of that society. And again, that was one of the motives of trying to help the tokatsu model to be translated abroad. And making that I made a tokatsu homepage in English, and now it's in Arabic and Chinese as well. But that was the motive behind it. Much more the diversification of models that can be seen in the international arena. I don't think, I realize that there's a lot of emphasis on achieving, scores and subjects, and because that's what is tested, that parents would want that, or at least there's a perception that is the need. But again, there is, I think there is a shift in the international discourse, that and understanding that emotional and social and stability and motivation, non-cognitive traits are very important, just as important, if not even more, depending on the age of the child, as academics. See, so I think that again, that assumption is part of the Japanese, school education, and I don't think people would see the tension, at least not in the curriculum. As you saw in the curriculum, the non-cognitive is with the cognitive. So that balance of heart and body and mind is I think part of it. Of course, the pressures of the exam are very cognitive, right? It's the subjects, but then I think there's more of an understanding worldwide, actually, that without the non-cognitive side, without motivation, without knowing where you're headed or what you want in life, for example, if you're headed toward a society or a world where your goals are not quite, as set as before, then you're going to have trouble, even if you do well in math. See, so that part, I think, is a worldwide trend. If you look at the educational reform proposals of many countries for the 21st century, holistic development, whole child, and those are everywhere. No, and you're not talking just about Asia. You're talking also about the West. In many countries, I think that is becoming recognized. So I don't think, and I agree that in the reality, because of the exam pressure and because of the rankings and things like that, maybe there is a pressure toward subjects. But I think the importance of non-cognitive learning is being recognized now, and the tension is not seen as a tension in many circles anymore. And I think that will increasingly be so, because it is, if you look around, that is, if you can't see this two as separate, and the school is responsible only for this academic side, the cognitive side. Because, for example, I first felt this very strongly when I went to other Southeast Asian countries, for example, and I looked at some of the models they were adopting for non-cognitive learning, and most of them are Western, social emotional learning, and which are fine, but sometimes that did not seem to match the needs of the society, but and also because most of Asia was colonized and sometimes colonized by Western powers, and so the model of the structure of the education itself would be somewhat borrowed in the beginning, which is now changing a bit. And so when you have a borrowed model, which is very different from the needs of the society, the community fits the the needs, and then the family fits the needs, and then the school does not fit that need. So I went around, and when I was speaking, I was trying to get the people the teachers in the society, that I went to think about what are some of the models, the reform models that they can think of that would match their experiences in the community. And it was very hard for them to do that, I found, because there was very little systematic models that were not Western that were in the international sphere. See, so even when I talked about Tokatsu, okay, I brought this up first, but not because of trying to advertise a Japanese model, but trying to get them to think about what they can bring out of their culture. And I brought the Japanese example, trying to get that out, and then it was translated as it's something like social and emotional learning. You see, again, that model is those kind of models in the Western sense, which have become international, are so strong that even the Tokatsu model, which is probably more holistic in a way, and different, it has differences, has to be translated to be understood. You see, that's where it started. Well, of course, there is always culture, but then I think education is a controlled environment for socialization, has its own role, and culture in a way can be remade, see, through education. And I was making that point actually yesterday, in a session on school cleaning, because Singapore is trying to bring in school cleaning into its curriculum. And someone brought up the point about it's in the culture in Japan, but maybe not in Singapore. But again, I don't quite agree. But then I again think that traditions change, culture changes, right? Education is a focused process of socialization that when the society agrees on something, then it is the direction that it takes. You see, so and education, I think, has two roles. One is to meet the needs of a society, but the other, I think, is a vision. See, a vision of, for example, a multicultural democratic vision, which has not yet been realized anywhere on this world, but which is a vision that you have to work toward. See, so, and I think those two are the main roles of education, and the latter is creating people that will enable that kind of world to be. See, so you have different, and I think again that you don't have to look at. I mean, you can look at everywhere, but I think it's unrealistic to expect envoys from foreign countries to look I think you can look at the education and look at how it's structured, and then educational transfer and educational borrowing, you will always change it, I'm sure, to the context of your own society, and it will never be the same as the original, right? But the point, I think, from the originating country is whether the core, the core part is transferred. It's not like you need every detail like this. It's much more whether the core ideal, the core ideology, whether that part is transferred. I think in the Japanese tokatsu, it's the self-initiated, the child-initiated, autonomous, collaborative activities and learning by doing part. If those parts are transferred, I think the others parts are I won't say unimportant, but they aren't crucial to the center of the model. And I think it's like that with any other, right? Any other model.